Hey everyone, welcome to my channel and also welcome to my very first YouTube video. My name is Shilpa and in this series we are going to learn Java programming from the very beginning. So if you always wanted to learn how to code or understand how apps and softwares are made, you're in the right place. So this is episode 1 and today I'll give you a quick introduction to programming languages, Java, and help you run your first Java program. Okay. Alright, so let's talk about different types of programming languages. So this is a really important foundation, especially before we dive into things like data structures and algorithms. So this is the core. So this episode will start from the very basics and it will continue up to advanced Java. Also we will be covering DSA in this, and finally we will be working on a project so that you can understand and actually apply these concepts into real life. Okay, so let's check why understand programming languages. So this is basically foundation before DSA and it improves your problem solving across all languages. And in this video it's just a core idea which is universal to Java, Python and C++. Again, so let's dive into what a programming language is. Okay, so whatever you do, but the computers only understand the language of zeros and ones, which is binary, but it would be impossible for us to write complex instructions in just zeros and ones. So programming languages are made so that we can program these programming languages, translate these human code, the language which is closer to humans, so humans can read and understand, and then the computer compiles or interprets that code into machine code that actually runs. So this programming language acts as a medium to communicate with the PCs, and also as I mentioned, compilers and interpreters performs the translation. So these compilers or interpreters, these are two different entities. We'll be learning more about them later on in the series, but just remember that these are the translators which convert these programming language into machine code. Okay, so since we already know what a programming language is, now let's talk about types of languages. So there are various ways of categorizing languages, and herein we'll be categorizing them by two types. One is by programming paradigm, that is the style of coding, and one is by typing system, or we can say by how the data types are interpreted, which is static or dynamic. Okay, so if we see programming paradigms, it defines how we structure our code and how it is interpreted or how it runs. So the common paradigms, or the three types of programming language on the basis of programming paradigms, is procedural, functional and object oriented. Okay, so let's talk about procedural programming. So this is exactly what it sounds like. This like it's a series of steps or procedures that you need to follow in a specific order. You can think of it like a recipe. You first gather the ingredients, then you mix them, and then you bake. So the program has to follow that order. A lot of languages including C and even parts of Java and Python follow this procedural approach. Okay. And then the second one is functional language. Okay, so these uses pure functions to write a code. So a pure function can be thought of like a math calculator or any math function, math machine. So you give it an input and it always gives you the same output, never changes anything outside of itself. So it does not modify anything, it does not modify variables, it just takes data and returns new data which is the output. So this is really useful when you are working with large data sets like in machine learning or for data science. So in this you can perform many operations on the data without ever changing the original file. So Python basically use a lot of functional concepts, and also for that matter JavaScript. And now let us move ahead to object-oriented programming. So object-oriented programming is a big one, especially if you are willing to work with Java, because Java is primarily object-oriented programming. Okay, so here the core idea is to bundle your code and your data together into objects. You can think of it like any object, any real-world object. Suppose a car. So a car has data, that is, it has its color, its model, its engine type, and then it has the functions that it is performing, that it can start, it can stop, it can accelerate, it can change its direction. So herein in OOPS we can consider car as a class which is basically a blueprint, and each specific car, suppose any specific model of Maruti Suzuki, so that is the actual object or the instance of the blueprint. So this kind of coding makes it much easier to manage large programs. So suppose if you want to fix any problem with the engine, you just go to the engine part of your code and the entire, and not the entire car program. So you don't need to go through the complete program, you can just make changes into a certain part of the program, right? So Java is heavily OOPS based, as I already mentioned. Now here, as I told you beforehand, that procedural language, some parts are followed by Java, as well as Java is purely object oriented. So then we have, it comes with a new concept. So the key takeaway is that most modern languages like Java and Python aren't just one of these three types of languages. They are multi-paradigm languages. That means a combination of these. Okay, so like Java uses OOPS concept as well as procedural, and alongside Python also uses procedural, functional and OOPS method, right? So now moving ahead, we can also classify these programming languages into two types by how their variables are checked. Okay, so this is a static type and a dynamic type. So basically in static type, you need to initialize it in like upfront. You need to initialize the data type upfront, and in dynamic typing it will be initialized during runtime. So just a moment's time. So the statistically typed languages like Java or C++, we need to declare the type of variable upfront. We need to say that int a is equals to 10. Here int is mentioned because we are specifying that a will only store integer values. Okay, no other value can be stored in a. I was not able to draw. So as I said, int is basically integer. In Java we use int, it's a keyword to specify integer data type. Okay, so if we have mentioned int a is equals to 10, that means only integer values. If later on in the program you mention a is equals to hello, it is a error. It will show an error during the compile time. Also for that matter, if you initialize int a is equals to hello, same error will be displayed. So this is a much stricter way. it's much stricter in this, but then again during runtime less errors are there are less errors, as most of them are resolved during the compile time. Okay, now let's move ahead to dynamic typing. So in this type, the data type is determined during the execution. So this is more flexible as compared to the statically typed. But then again, if any issues are there in the data type, then that can only be determined during the runtime, not during the compile time. So in Python, suppose the language determines it during the execution, so you can just simply write a is equals to 10, and even once initializing a is equals to 10, so the automatically the language will be interpreting a as a integer data type. But suppose later on in the program you mention a is equals to hello, that is also perfectly fine, it won't show any compile time error. But then again, if there are any errors, then only during the runtime it can be caught. Okay, so these are the two types of languages. So now let's understand that how this works in the memory. Okay, so if you are writing a simple statement like a is equals to 10, what changes or how this is stored in the memory, inside that, how what is really happening. So if we initialize a is equals to 10, what actually happens is the memory splits into stack and heap type, right? So stack is a kind of organized structure in which variables and the reference like the address is stored. This is the stack memory, and then this is the heap, as the name itself suggests. So if a is equals to 10, then a will be mentioned here, and also it will be storing the reference, and it will be pointing towards the object 10. 10 is the object and this is the variable. Okay, it's the object and this is the variable, right? So the actual data types, actual data objects are stored in heap, wherein the stack store variable references. Okay, yes, so references in action. So multiple references can point to one object. So suppose both A and B can point to object 10 in the heap memory. Suppose A is equals to 10 we mentioned, and then B is equals to A. Then in the heap, so in the stack, suppose A is there and then B is there, so both will be pointing towards object 10. Same thing happens with here, my list 1 2 3, so your list is equals to my list, so same reference 1 2 3 will be both of these will be pointing towards the same object, that is 1 2 and 3. Okay, now let's move ahead to garbage collection. Yeah, right. So as I mentioned that you can simply initialize a variable, suppose a is equals to 10, and later on you can change, suppose a is equals to later on in the program you change it into a is equals to 37. So suppose in the heap memory, so in the stack, suppose a is there, b is there, or others are also there, and in stack in heap 10 is there, 37 is there. So first a was pointing towards 10. After that, when you initialize a is equals to 37, this reference will be deleted and a new reference and object will be created to 37. Now if you see 10 has no reference. After a is initialized to 37, 10 has no reference. So in that case, automatically garbage collection happens. That means the unused or unreferenced objects from the heap memory are removed. So this happens automatically on certain duration. So 10 will be removed from the heap memory. So this frees up space in the heap and in the memory, so this can be deleted. So yeah, so today's summary is we got to know about three types of programming languages on the difference on the basis of paradigms and on the basis of typing, statically and dynamically typed programming languages. We also learned about stack and heap memory and also garbage collection. Okay, gives insights how the code works. So now we will move ahead to run our first Java program. So as we have not downloaded the any Java platform as of now, but do not worry, we'll do it on our online compiler so that we can actually get a feel of how a code is running and how we can write a code and get an output. So yeah. So thank you, and the next episode will be how to install Java and writing hello. Okay, so let's continue it in the next video only. So we'll be installing Java and writing the hello world code. Okay, so you can like, subscribe and comment if you liked something, and if you want me to change certain things, then you can also always mention that into the comment section. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.